There it is. Alrighty. Hello, everybody. It's time. Inspired by my friend Northern Lion. Northern Lion, Invicta, Mouth, Lethal Frag, a lot of good people out there. We all play a lot of roguelites. It's just kind of what we do. It's kind of the whole genre of our bread and butter. And I was like, well, Northern Lion did this ranking S to D tier. I know, tier lists. Yeah, they haven't been done too much this year, but it's fine. I like tier lists. We talk about items being tiered in roguelites all the time, so I figured this might be the best way to do it. So we're going to rank them. We're going to rank them as best as we can. Now, this, I should say at the beginning of this is absolutely in no way, shape, or form any respect or disrespect based on the rankings for any of these developing companies. If a game is on here, it's got my full respect. And I've played it long enough to be able to give it an opinion. If it's not on here, that doesn't mean I don't respect it, but there are some games that were developed by chat, which we're live streaming and everything, that I was like, oh man, that game was good, but I only played like a couple runs of it, so I'm not going to put that on here. And then there are some games that I don't consider roguelites that Ryan did consider a roguelite, and I was like, I don't know about that. And then there's some early access stuff like Hades that I would love to put on my ranking list, but it's not fully done. It's not technically out yet. I feel like there's still possibility for that game to change a lot. Hades is really good right now, but it could change quite a bit. We said this with like Dead Cells. Dead Cells came out. We can actually start with Dead Cells right now. There's a double list on here too. It's weird with the uploading system. I'm sorry. So Dead Cells, we'll start with Dead Cells. I'll put this in here for now. So Dead Cells is one of those games that when it released, it had very little content, but the concept was there and it was really, really good. The combat system was really good. A lot of the items were based on flavor and taste, but also based on rank as well. There were a couple bosses. They were fun. There were different ways to go through it. They eventually later added Twitch integration, which, you know, many people have different things and different opinions when it comes to Twitch integration. Personally, I like Twitch integration, but especially with this game, it made it really hard. It made the game a little bit too hard, if you ask me. So there's a lot of give and take to whether or not that was a good thing. I know that they wanted to add more, blah, 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 but the game changed a few times. I actually didn't like it in the middle of its early access development. I thought the game was sometimes too hard and sometimes too easy, and it just felt like I had to, you know, kind of rush through the game or take it slow, and it didn't really, I was forced to do things that I didn't really want to do in that game. But for the most part, it was really fun, and I did really like it. So I'm actually going to rank this at an A. As much as I think that I could have maybe got different opinions throughout its development, when it finally released, I thought it was at a good spot. It was really fun to play. I loved the combat. I loved how quickly it could just go through it without really thinking about too much. And then every time a new item came up, you're like, oh, okay, this actually might be a good decision. And the upgrades that went along with it. Every now and then you'd get screwed, so it'd give you a little bit of heartbreak. I think the Twitch integration that they did, even if it was too hard, was still unique and fun. Being able to hang out with chat and basically have them torture you in a way to where they could heal you or not heal you, or if you really needed something to, like, really quick, it was really hard, and that person had to be paying attention to the chat or the stream pretty much the whole time. So that kind of, it was a little bit weird, but it was fun. It was a nice little way to get everybody intervening and into doing what you're doing. And it was a good time. So I'm going to put that in A. I know that most people might put this at a B or C, and I think it's a very loved game, so it might sit at a B because of mechanics versus love and how much people were really into it. But at the same time, who knows? We'll see. I would love to see everybody that does it. This format is uploaded to what is this, tier rank something, tierlist.com or something like that. So you guys can use this if you want. Get in there and do your own. I will probably make a new one because, as you can see, I doubled up some of the images, which was a mistake. I didn't mean to, but it happened. So we're here now. There's a few other ones on here that I'm sure people will talk about and have problems with, but we'll we'll get through that as we go about it. So Dead Cells we're gonna put at the bottom here, and then what's next? Let's go with Darkest Dungeon. Darkest Dungeon, one of my probably all-time favorite games. It's definitely in my top 5 for like favorite games ever. I really like Darkest Dungeon. I also think that categorizing this as a roguelike was something that I'm sure some people have some problems with, but I think for the most part we understand it as a roguelike. It's a very, 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 very long form roguelike. Each run doesn't take you an hour to 2 hours or to 3 hours even. It takes you several weeks of straight up gameplay to get through a run, and you could even speed run it, but it still takes you quite a while. So while it is a very unique form of roguelike, it is still a roguelike, and I thought that was really good. But it brought it back to like old JRPG time-based, like turn-based mechanics with knowing the type of dungeon, knowing which enemies you might bring up. You can plan out basically. There is a math to the madness in the game itself. A lot of people were very it was very rough for people to get through until they actually learned that, hey, there is a calculation you can do to where you have not maybe perfect chances of getting through it, and you can't just be the best, but you can diminish your losses as much as possible. At least if you have a really bad RNG, you can at least minimize that, you know what I mean? So once you got the hang of this game, it was really in depth, it was really fun, there was a lot of stats that you can hold on to, but it was also simple in a lot of ways, and it created a lot of emotion in people, and I think that was the most important part. Was it was a game that you can do runs of, there was enough RNG, and it kept people going back and forth. As it is one of my favorite games, I struggle between an A and a B, because there were times where I just couldn't play this game for more than a few hours because it was just too stressful. But I think that was kind of the purpose of the game, so I can't dock them for that. I think I have to put it at an A, honestly, which is a shame. Because I think that being one of my favorite games, it doesn't quite hit that S tier for certain gameplay purposes. There were times to where you had no choice and it was just going to screw you over, which you're going to get that in a lot of games too, but it felt stressful, and I think that's not really what I go for games these days. I feel like I'm maybe too old to go for games that just very much stress me out sometimes. But then again, once you got in between all of that, in between the stress, it was really, really, really good. Not to mention stress was a mechanic in the game. So I think I'm going to put it in A. As much as it just pains me not to put it in S, I think I have to make it an A. S is going to be a very special category for probably 1, maybe 2 games. Honestly, yeah, 1, maybe 2 games that may fit in the S category. 1 for sure, but one it's going to maybe fit in the S category. Let's go to Dicey Dungeons. Dicey Dungeons was a game it was a card game, it was a dice game, it was an RNG game, it was a dungeon crawler, I say was, but it is. People are still playing it, I'm sure, because it's still a very good game. And the game started to get harder and harder the more you progressed. And I think that each chapter as you went on, and each character, we'll talk about characters in a second, but each character very much made the game unique. Or each chapter, rather. It got harder, there was new things to look at, the difficulty went up, but it kind of went up in a uniform way. Like you knew exactly how hard it was going to get from chapter to chapter for the most part. Like, oh, it's going to be twice as hard, it's going to be twice as hard, it's going to be twice as hard, it's going to be 1.5 times as hard. So it kind of, after a certain point, I stopped playing just because I knew how hard it was going to be next time, and I kind of knew it was going to go on, and I knew what cards I was going to use and stuff like that. It was very good, and I played it enough to really learn that the game was unique. Not necessarily for the gameplay, because it was very much a Slay the Spire type of game with some different aesthetics to it and stuff like that. But I thought for the most part it was fun. The best part about the game, I think, was that each character was so unique. The chapters, whatever, like it was just a difficulty spike, really, for the most part, or difficulty upgrade, I should say. But the characters and each character itself were so different that I think that's what the biggest part of it was. But outside of the characters, I didn't see myself getting sucked in too hard to the game. With that, I have to give it a C. Unfortunately, it was a cute game. It's a nice game. It's a fun game. And I definitely think that the devs did really well with it. But for me and my fun factor and the amount that I liked it and stuck with it, I think should tell you how much it just didn't really bring me in. So I think I have to put it at a C. Which is unfortunate because it's a very liked game, but I think there's a reason it didn't stick around too much on Twitch or YouTube. It did a little bit, but not nearly as much as I thought it would, or not really as much as I would think it would based on the idea of it. I'm also not really a card or dice type game player, so the fact that it sucked me in that much was pretty okay. These next two games I'm actually gonna hold off. Because while they're very good games, and they may or may not be my favorites, I have to be careful in how we run this show, because we want to compliment Sandwich a little bit with this tier ranking stuff. I think we're gonna go with a more unique game. We're gonna go with Immortal Redneck to go next. Immortal Redneck. I would say most people that play this genre, in fact, I would say for the most part, people who play games in general probably ignored this one. I think it's sort of a sleeper. Immortal Redneck, for those that don't know, it very much is a roguelike. But it's a first-person shooter roguelike, which is something that I actually wanted to play more of all the time, and I wanted more games to come out like this. I think one did. I forgot what it was. A Mother Gunship. I didn't play too much of that, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted out of a first-person shooter roguelike. It also really wasn't a roguelike from what I saw. It was more of just a static RPG, but nonetheless, that's not on the list, so we're not going to talk about it. Immortal Redneck. There were different Egyptian gods that you could basically be. They also had their different categories or different strengths and weaknesses, but they also encouraged you to play all of them because they would give you bonuses if you hadn't played them in a while. But you got guns and different items with each one, and then you can see the ones as they went up, and then you went up in a pyramid. The best part about this game, in my opinion, is the level progression and how that worked, and how each floor went with, how typical roguelikes, you have floors that you go through, how each floor happened. So the first floor, the biggest, because it's at the bottom of a pyramid. Obviously it's Egyptian, it's the where you go through a pyramid, you're at the bottom, it's the biggest floor, right? And as you go up, it gets smaller and smaller. So as it gets harder, the levels get smaller, so you don't have to really skip rooms for the most part. You don't have to conserve too much ammo. You just want to build the best character you possibly can. And I think that was a huge strength of the game itself. I think this had Twitch integration, but I don't think I ever streamed it. I played it on my own. I played it probably way after it was released and popular and stuff like that. But it was good. I thought it was really good. I'm sad it didn't last very long. I'm sad a lot of people didn't play it, but it is a solid game. It was a shooter that worked. It was a shooter that was a roguelike, which was super huge for me. And it was just overall a blast. It had some personality. The characters had your voice that was just redneck that was just running through a sand dune and crashed somewhere in Egypt and died, and he would always resurrect, was pretty cool. And then you can use your gold to upgrade your skills and stuff like that. I thought that was really good. However, it does not have a super unique loop. So as much as I praise this game, the gameplay loop did have a few problems, and for that reason, I'm going to put that at a B. I'm going to get that at a B. It's better than Dicey Dungeons in my opinion, but it's not better than Dead Cells. And so I put it at a B for that time. Yeah. As much as I just praised the hell out of it, it also didn't last long on YouTube or Twitch for probably some of those reasons. Hey Patchy, Happy New Year. So let's go on to Into the Breach, which I do have a lot to talk about. Into the Breach. As a roguelike, was pretty good. It fits in this category very solidly. It's very nice. It's made by the same people that did FTL. Very, 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 very reputable company. Makes really good, solid games. I had problems with how much I loved this game to how hard it was to create content for this game. I really liked it. I really liked the difference in mechs that you can use. I really liked the maps that you did, and I really liked the fact that they were just puzzles. What I didn't like was also the fact that they were just puzzles. There wasn't a whole lot of skill involved. It was a lot of whether or not you took enough time to figure out the right solution, because you can essentially test everything. You can test every decision you were going to make. If you do this, this is going to happen. If you do this, this is going to happen. If you do this, this is going to happen. There was no RNG. There was absolutely zero RNG, I believe. It was on a little board, and you used your mechs to do all sorts of things. With that came the near impossibility on how to stream the game. I could not stream the game. After I played it on release, I played it before release. I played it a whole bunch, and I couldn't stream the game too much. Because there was always an optimal solution. Same thing with like Hearthstone, stuff like that. Because there was always an optimal solution, there was always somebody in chat that knew that solution and basically called you an idiot for not doing that solution. Or there was somebody who just was bored because you were just sitting there thinking the whole time, and sometimes those people overlapped. It's like, I'm bored, you're not making a decision, I know the decision, I'm freaking out, I'm gonna punch my monitor right now, this is the absolute worst thing that could ever happen in my life ever. So that created a big, like, weird type of viewership for games like that, and that also was a little bit frustrating with you knowing that there's a solution out there and you're like, I just can't find it. Or I made a mistake 2 turns ago and now I have to deal with that for basically the rest of the run because I'm going to be out this mech, or this mech is going to be super damaged. So that was problematic. With both those things together, good and the bad, I actually probably have to put this at a C. As much as I really like the game, as much as the game is very well made and solid, I think that there were too many issues that they tried to recreate from FTL that just didn't work in this format. But still very fun to play. Obviously, none of these games will never ever hit an F. They wouldn't be on here if they were an F. I didn't put them on if I thought they were an F. C is still a pretty solid grade. All right, still a pretty solid grade. All right, we're gonna do Isaac, one of the what I called the godfather of roguelikes. Roguelikes didn't really exist in the same way that they do now if it weren't for Isaac. I was talking to Katie about this the other day. I was like, yeah, roguelikes are all, kind of based around the game Rogue and games that came after that and stuff like that. And then I think it kind of pinnacled as far as mechanic wise. So far, I think there's definitely a lot of room to go, and I think people are doing that. It sort of pinnacled with Isaac. I do not think Isaac is the best roguelike out there, but I do think it is probably one of the most important roguelikes out there. It kind of started a whole genre revolution. It kind of started the genre in general. It was really what gave the genre the most attention. Was Isaac. From Flash Isaac to the Binding of Isaac to Rebirth, and then a lot of community interaction with Afterbirth and Afterbirth Plus and stuff like that, and hopefully this year with Repentance, there's a lot of stuff in Isaac. But as some of the better Isaac players out there, Sinvicta and Northern Lion and everybody out there, Lethal Frag, they'll all tell you, and iCasper, they'll all tell you that there's a lot of items in this game that are just either confusing, and they don't need to be there because of how confusing they are, or they're utterly useless, and they either cancel other things out, or they don't do anything at all, or they're just there to be there, I guess. So it's like if So we know the developer pretty well. We know a lot about him. He's a good dude. He's a very good developer. He made Bumbo this year, which was awesome, and it just sounded like he's been working on the game so long that to get everything to line up perfectly it's just too much, man. I fully understand that. Um, so there was a lot of items that kind of did the same thing or nothing at all, and it's it's a little annoying. I also don't. I think as much as this was one of the first roguelites I ever played, back during the Flash days, it felt and it still does feel super floaty, and I think that's what makes the game hard for me. I'm okay at it, but I'm nowhere near any of the top level players. But there is a lot to be here. I think this game is very, very good, and I think it deserves a high rank for its godfatherness, but I still have to keep it kind of low near the middle because there's so many things that have been improved because of it, and there's so many things that I would have improved personally throughout it. But it is still a very fun game. It does the one thing that I wish every roguelike would do, which I'm super sad that they don't. Risk of Rain 2 is doing that very well right now, but I think that this deserves, in my opinion, weirdly, the most praise. And I know it's not an insult because it's such a small thing. I promise it's not an insult. It's very much just, I love it. I absolutely love it. Is your appearance of your character changes based on the items that you have. Risk of Rain 2 does this very well. Every item kind of changes your appearance a little bit. You get bigger eyes, you get swollen eyes, you get butthole eyes, probably not. You get coin eyes, you get a thing in your head, you get your arms change, you got wings, your legs change, you get this weird hairdo, you got something stuck, It's just those little things, they make the run so unique. They make each run visually different. And that's, I think, important to a roguelike. We'll talk about Gungeon later, but Gungeon never did that, and I think that was probably my least favorite part of the game, and it sucked because I really, really love that game. We'll talk about how much I love Gungeon in a second. It just changing the visual aspect of what's going on throughout each run based on the items you have. Somebody who's watching your stream can look at a glance. It's like, oh, I can see all the items there on the left there, but I love the way that this character looks based. This is what an ultimate character looks like, and it was just awesome. So I think that was a big part of Isaac, but it was also a Godfather, which is why I keep that right near the middle. I'm gonna put a B on it. I'm just gonna keep a B on it. It's not gonna go anywhere. It's just gonna sit right there. Put it right there, right in the middle. It's gonna be a B. A or S, I think many people will give it. Personally, I try not to feed my nostalgia brain, so I kind of have to keep it at a B. Moonlighter. We talked about this. I was not sure I wanted to put this on the list as a roguelite yet, because it has so many more aspects outside of roguelike that I was a little afraid of putting it there. But then I thought about it, I was like, the gameplay is very roguelike. Outside of opening up your shop, everything is pretty roguelike. You go into a dungeon, you do the dungeon, you come out with stuff, and you use that stuff to upgrade your house or your buildings, or buy new buildings, or give weapons to people. You also upgrade your weapons, stuff like that. It's more RPG than it is a lot of other things, but I think there's enough roguelike in there that it fits in this discussion here. With that being said, I think that there were a lot of problems with it early on. When it finally released, I think it's released. This may be a total mistake that it's even on here in the first place, but I'm pretty sure it's released. But before it released, it was very, very shallow, and it felt like the gameplay loop was super, super repetitive. But, you can say that about a lot of roguelikes. But I still think it did really well. The only problem with it was, it also was mostly about gear. And it was about the gear that you brought back, and it was never really about beating the game. In fact, I was so discouraged from doing a full run because I just wanted to come back with the gold and items that I had, that I actually stopped playing it because I was like, I want to get to the end of a roguelike. So with that, I have to give it a D. As much as it was still really fun, though. So I did like it, but there's a lot of things that held it back, and I think it may have been trying to do a little bit too much. I think if Moonlighter was more of a actual RPG with persisting caves and dungeons and stuff, with maybe some instead of roguelike aspects to how they created their levels, but more Minecraft-like in how they created their levels. I think that would have been cool. Because if you had, it's like, hey, there's this item down here. I know exactly where it is, but I don't know what I don't know what enemies are going to be spawning there. You may have to do a little bit of thinking of how you're going to get through it. Oh, do I want to go get that item and face the giant troll that's there? Maybe not. Maybe I want to go back home and rearm and regroup and stuff like that. Whereas you couldn't really do that in the game because every time you went in, it was different. So the roguelike aspect, I think, actually kind of killed the game a little bit. If it were an RPG shop creator, builder, stuff like that, I think it would have been really, really good. I think the roguelike aspect actually took away from it, but still being a fun game for, 20 or so hours, 20 or 30 hours. So I would keep it. That's why it's on the list, is because I do respect it, but I do have to put it back down to a D because it was a little bit problematic. Let's go to some classics. We're gonna do Nuclear Throne and Rogue Legacy together because for me they're gonna probably hit the same rank. Nuclear Throne is solid. It's just a solid top-down twin stick shooter or mouse and keyboard 2D shooter with great roguelike mechanics, great upgrades and downgrades for items, great bonuses and negatives to each character, and it had a very high level of difficulty. It's a very hard game. Nuclear Throne, I think, is quite difficult. With that, I think Rogue Legacy kind of fits in that same category. Each person or each generation had some good pluses and minuses. You got to choose those things. Different weapons to start off with, good bonuses and negatives to the weapons you picked up, and shields and armors and stuff like that. Also decently difficult. I wouldn't say it's as difficult as Nuclear Throne, but pretty difficult. And it had some cool stuff. It was also, both of these are pretty much pinnacles as well. They kind of fit in the same pinnacle category as Isaac of being games that influenced a ton of roguelikes after it. Nuclear Throne very influenced by Isaac, but came out pretty close to the pinnacle of Isaac's lifetime too. So they're very similar for kind of the same reason. And Rogue Legacy being kind of the godfather to Isaac in a lot of those ways, in the way Isaac kind of shaped and formed itself. So I would say all three of these games very much influenced each other. And I think that's a very big and important point to bring up when ranking these guys, because they're going to all have the same rank. Yes, they're all Bs. Rogue Legacy is a game that I have to fight against my nostalgia factor for that too, because Rogue Legacy is more nostalgia than anything to me. However, I remember playing it and not only just having a good time, which is exactly what nostalgia is, but I also remember how many different things there were. And in playing games now, I still look back on Rogue Legacy and say, okay, I do wish it was more like that. And I do wish that this mechanic was also transferred to this new game, because there's a lot of cool things in there that I really did like. But yeah, I'm going to give those all three the same rank because I think they're all very equal in how much fun they were, and they were all equal in sort of the new age mechanics and stuff like that. But we're ranking all these games together, and we can't put too much nostalgia in there. I think games are better because of them, and unfortunately that does mean they have to degrade in rank. It's kind of just how it goes. We're talking about a whole decade here, so there's a lot of stuff happening in the last 10 years, and that whole decade is very much influenced by each other, and it's all affecting each other. So I think that even maybe 5 or 6 years ago I would have given these games a much higher rank, but I think now they might have even been an S tier rank. I don't know, but I know that they've got to put them in a B because of the new things that have come out since. However, speaking of older roguelikes, and speaking of classic roguelikes and things that have been around for a good amount of time, and the nostalgia that comes with this, Spelunky is one of the first. Spelunky and Isaac both, but mostly Spelunky, are two games that I actually started playing because of the lovely Ashley Birch, who is the voice actor and does all kinds of cool stuff. She actually told me about these games when we did an interview way back in the day, and I was like, dude, I have to check these out. And it's a big reason why I got turned on to roguelikes in general. I was like, oh, I can be good at a game and actually not have to play against other terrible human beings and play games like Call of Duty and Counter-Strike. Oh, also, it's going to challenge me and I'm going to have a different experience basically every time I play. Oh, this is perfect. I'm going to play more roguelikes. And the first 2 roguelikes I played were The Binding of Isaac and Spelunky. I was very bad at them. Still am pretty bad at both of those games, by the way. But they very much brought in a lot of cool stuff. The thing is, Spelunky is so pure and so much fun and just genuine simple skill and knows what it wants and knows what you have to do and gives you so many more surprises based on unlocks that I have to give it an A. It goes above Isaac, Nuclear Throne, and Rogue Legacy. It is so good and pure as a game. I'm not very good at it. It's the only one of the 3 on the A tier that I know that I can't beat consistently. Hey, Sean Dracula, how are you? It's only one of the 3 A tiers so far that I cannot beat consistently. But every time I do play, I never have a bad time. I've never had a bad time with Spelunky. I've gotten frustrated a couple times, and I knew I should have gotten further, but I've never had a bad time with Spelunky. It's very pure, it's very good, and it's just purely enjoyable as well. Now brings me to a very difficult decision. Actually, no, it doesn't. We're gonna leave that. I was gonna leave Risk of Rain. I was gonna do Risk of Rain now, but I think we're gonna sandwich this with some good ones, some really, really good ones. In fact, you guys don't even have to have me talk about this too much. Enter the Gungeon gets an S tier rank, 100%. 100% Enter the Gungeon gets an S tier rank. You want to talk about games that are purely inspired by The Binding of Isaac and Nuclear Throne together? You get those, all the good things that you have in both those games, you smash them together, and you have Enter the Gungeon. One of the best games that I've ever... It's probably my number 2 game of all time, right under games like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and well, that's about it. That's pretty much one of the only games that beats out Enter the Gungeon for me. I love this game so much. I've played it so many times. It's probably, out of all these games in here, because I have lots of hours in all these games, it definitely has the most hours of me playing it. Probably over 1,000 at least. It's one of my favorite games. It's fantastic. It has everything you'd ever want in a roguelike, as far as like the top-down shooter type thing. It's just each update that they did, not DLC update, whatever you want to call it. Each DLC and update that they did made the game better, made it more accessible to new players. So anybody who was playing it from the beginning, you knew how hard it was. It was very hard. In fact, it took me about 50 hours of gameplay to beat the dragon for the first time, and then it took me another 10 to 15 to beat the lich. And then, you know, you had optional things you can do all the time to where it just extended and made the game better, like doing the rat punch-out game, or going to the latest new level at the labs, or going to the secret levels to possibly get more stuff, or keeping it off because you wanted to do the run faster. Like, there's all kinds of things that you could do with the game, and then they updated to where it's like, oh, people are thinking about synergies and how those work. Let's actually give a first-party in-game type of synergy system that you knew was going to work, and actually upgraded the gun even better, or upgraded the item, or whatever it might be. Enter the Gungeon did it all, in my opinion, right and perfect. I think it did a very, very good job of what it was asking of their players, and getting what they wanted, and it was awesome. I still is awesome. I love this game to death. I have it on 3 different platforms, played on every single one. The Switch is a little bit hard, especially when fighting the dragon, because you have so many things on the screen, but it is overall 100% an S tier game. I don't even just mean as a roguelike. Granted, roguelikes are almost always going to be at the top of my list anyway. Basically, if it's a roguelike, there's a good chance that it's going to be near the top of my list of just games in general, which is why I didn't do a top 10 games or top games of the decade. I just did top roguelikes of the decade, because quite honestly, those are my favorite. It's my favorite genre. It's got the most to do for me. But yeah, I can talk about this game basically all day long. I'm not going to, because this is already getting very, very long. We're probably going to have to cut this down a little bit, but it's definitely good. Check out Enter the Gungeon if you haven't already. Next, we're going to go to something that I'm going to have a hard time with. Risk of Rain. Risk of Rain being one of the difficult decisions for me. It inspired a lot. It is inspired by a lot. It is a big game when it comes to items and which items you want to use, which items you like, which bosses you're going to fight, how to beat the game, all kinds of things. With that being said, I think it is still very simple of a game. But I do think that it is a very fun game. I was gonna put it at an A. This is what I'm fighting with. Do I put it at an A or do I put it at a B? I think I have to put it at a B because as much as I love this game, I don't like the pixelization look of the game. Same reason I didn't really like Noida or what's the other one? Children of Morta, but again, Children of Morta I don't think is a roguelike. I didn't like the look of the game. I do like the new one, though. The new 3D aspect with the third-person shooter of Risk of Rain 2 is fantastic. It also does what I was talking about with Isaac, which is changes your appearance of your character as you get more items and you get more things going on. It's actually fantastic. I love every part of it. That's definitely a big plus. The game is very fun. It is, once you do beat it, you do understand a lot about it, and you want to do more runs and more runs. There's a lot of characters to play. There's a lot of items to pick up. It's very, very complex, but also very fun and easy to handle. It also has a challenge to it as well. It's also got some cool things that may make you broken or super weak. The enemies are somewhat unique, but it is a weird. It's different than all the other games too, as far as how it plays. It is a side-on view. It's basically like Terraria. It's a side-on view 2D. Pixelated. That I think makes the game very unique too. So kind of like Spelunky actually, or Dead Cells. But it also plays differently because you play on a solid map, and you, instead of going up floors, you go up to different maps, kind of like Dead Cells. Yeah, I think it's very good. I think there are a lot of negatives that bring the game down, which is unfortunately what helps me put that at a B. I hate to do it. But it does get a B rank category. I realize that I'm making this chart look a little bit like a penis. That may change a little bit. Okay, so Risk of Rain deserves a high rank. B, I still think is a very high rank. Remember, S is going to be very special to me, so there's not going to be very many S's. But it doesn't deserve an A because there are quite a bit of negatives, in my opinion. But there's just a lot of positives. It just goes back and forth. Anyway. Let's see. So next, let's go with, let's see. We've done everything on the top right. I think we only have 3 games left. 4 games. 4 games left. Let's actually go with the Flame of the Flood. The Flame of the Flood might be one of the more unique games. Probably one of the games in this category, or in this genre, that has the most story, which was fun. I didn't play a ton of it. I played about 40 hours of it, which you might say is a lot of hours, man. I don't get to play that many hours. Well, I do this for a living. It's kind of just what we do. So 40 hours is not like a ton, especially for a roguelike. But from what I did play, it was the reason I loved it. So this is what I'm struggling with. The reason I loved it was because it was so different. However, it was a survival game. I don't play too many survival games because they do stress me out when you need to like stay, when you're thirsty all the time, when you're hungry all the time. But it's like the only redeeming factor of like Escape from Tarkov is if I'm dying, I just reset everything, or I just escape and it resets it anyway. So, but the stuff was good. What makes it a good roguelike is as you're flowing down the river, you have to make decisions of which way you want to go, how much effort you want to put towards it, what you want to carry. There's not a whole lot of combat, but it is still pretty stressful at the same time. With that being said, I think the major part of this that saves it is honestly the story and look of the game. It saves it from being a D because of the story and look from the game. The mechanics are fun, but they do get a little bit stale. The runs take a long time. That's not really a negative either, but it does have a bit of problem with a few things, but for the most part, it is a very pretty game. It's a very good story-driven game. The main character is really good. The cuteness and little things that pop up here and there are very good. The survivability, if you like Survivor games, does make this game very good. Not necessarily for me, but it does make this game very good. The lack of combat also brings it down from a B as well. I think the game is good, but it lacked a suck me in factor, if that makes sense. One more D rank and you have a doggo shape. Yeah, that's true. We might. I don't know if we have a D rank. I don't know. We got FTL, Slay the Spire, and Streets of Rogue. I'm gonna say right now we probably don't have a D rank in here. But maybe. Let's actually get into that. Let's get into that. The maybe is Streets of Rogue. This game is scary to me. I haven't played over 30 hours of this game, but I've played enough to know what's going on. I've also watched enough people play to know enough about the game. One of the big positives is that it is complex and it has online co-op. That is huge. I think it's the only game on this list that has that. Right? Yes. It's the only game on this list. I don't think Risk of Rain has it. I know Risk of Rain 2 has it, but I don't think Risk of Rain has it. It's the only game on this list that has online cooperation, which is huge. I would love more roguelites with online co-op. You can call GTFO a roguelike if you want to. You can call a lot of games like that if you want to, but those aren't out yet technically, but they're also... We'll see. We'll see what happens next year. Streets of Rogue, very good. Online co-op, very good. Lots of complex things to do, very good, but also sometimes too much. The game has a lot of systems. It has a lot of systems. And a lot of characters that do different things. However, that is also what makes it unique. And why I'm not giving it a D is because you don't have to do all those things. You actually can play the game pretty much any way you want to. And I think that is what saves it from being too complicated. I'm not one. I mean, I play Factorio, I play Stationeers, I play Space Engineers, I play a lot of freaking complicated games. I'm not one to shy away from complicated. But sometimes it is too much, and sometimes it's overwhelming, and sometimes it's just, you don't want to play a roguelike for that because of how much you got to put into it, and it doesn't really save a type of progress. You only see it once per like every couple hours, so that becomes a problem too. That's what brings it down to a C from a B, from my opinion. As much as I'm fine with complexity. It does have that factor of you can't learn it super easily unless you put a lot of time into it, which is fine. But it does kind of bring that down. What keeps it up is the multiplayer and how cute and fun it is, and the fact that you can do it however way you want. Because you have all these systems, but you don't have to take advantage of every single system. You can take advantage of the systems that you think you want to do, and also the ones that you have to do, but there's not tons of those. So there is that. Rimworld, we talked about Rimworld Schoolmaster. The only reason I can't call it a rogue... Well, actually, we never fully decided on Rimworld. If I were to rank Rimworld, we'll call it an honorable mention for this. There's so many customizations to that game that it very much makes it a city or a colony builder more than it does a roguelike for me. Because if you think about it, you know, SimCity could be a roguelike, right? Or City Skylines could be a roguelike because you start over every time. But there's so much customization to your map. There's so much customization to how many things are going to spawn there. There's too much customization going into a run that I can't call it a roguelike. But if I were to rank it in this, I would probably get it a solid A or B. But, well, that's not solid, is it? I'd probably give it an A. But it's not a roguelike, and if I were to put it in this category with all these games, it would probably drop its rank a couple times. But as games go, it's a very solid game. I would give it an A rank for sure. But yeah, it doesn't fit into this because I think there's too much customization going into the game that kind of takes a lot of the spirit of a roguelike out of it. But it is very hardcore. You can call it something like Darkest Dungeon, but Darkest Dungeon you always start the same. This is why Darkest Dungeon fits in and why Rimworld doesn't. Is there's a lot more RNG as far as what happens each and every little time to that. Even though you can diminish it, Rimworld kind of sits on a very heavy RNG basis, but you can kind of predict a lot of things based on the situations that are happening and what's going to happen. Plus, you have a lot of customization, and all, like we were talking about. It's the only reason it's not in this category, although it is still very good, and I would probably think about it. I have thought about it many times as a game that I do love. So I would put that in. I would put that in a overall games category. I would put that as an A rank for sure. I don't think it fits in this category though. I think it's a very good thing to bring up though, and a very good thing to discuss. So there is that. With everything being said, Streets of Rogue does fit in the C category. I liked it a lot, but I didn't love it, and I think that as much as it was complex, and it also had the fact that you didn't have to do it all, which was nice. So yeah, I put that in there. We've got 2 more games left. 2 very good games left, by the way. Let's start with Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire is contentious for me. I started playing Slay the Spire when it first dropped, when it was available to anybody, which honestly is before a lot of people knew about it, but a lot of people did as well. But before, I would say the majority of people knew about it. It dropped. It was 3 characters. They're very simple. All the art wasn't in. It was still learning to be what it was. Was it what it wanted to become? Very solid. But it was a card game, which I'm not too much of a card game kind of guy. I've never really played deck builders. It was all very new to me, so I was very bad at the game. It's eventually why I stopped playing it after like 3 months of streaming it pretty much solidly by itself. I loved trying to learn how to be good at the game, but I was so bad at it, and I didn't understand card games or card deck builders too well that I couldn't get as good as everybody else. And I think that discouraged me a little bit because there's a lot of people that play this game, and people like Hafu and Last Grey Wolf at the time, now Dumb Dog, were just stupid good at it. They were just so good, and they had been playing it for about a quarter of the time I had been playing it. So I just felt super discouraged. You know, like basically how most people feel in like Fortnite and PUBG and stuff like that. I just felt super discouraged, and I was like, I don't want to play this game anymore. It's hurting my ego. It's hurting my sensibility. I just don't want to play this anymore. But with all that being said, this definitely deserves an A. I know, I didn't mean to make this actually super symmetrical. I swear I didn't mean to make this symmetrical. Okay, good. I didn't mean to make this symmetrical. I swear I didn't. But it is. And I give it an A because it still is a very solid and well-made game. I wouldn't have tried to get as good as I wanted to be with this game if it wasn't good. It was very well balanced. The characters played very differently. For most people, like I had the opposite strengths. Like everybody loved playing the sword dude. I forget his name. And I loved playing the silent, and people were like, oh, I can't play the silent. I'm not good at the silent. I can't do it. It's like, that's the only one I am good at. But I love the silent a lot. Oh no, there's 2 characters, right? It was just those 2 characters. And then the glitch or whoever came in after, the reject or whatever it's called. I didn't play too much of him. I was kind of pretty much done playing him for a while. I only made to like Ascension 1. I beat the heart several times. I beat the heart a bunch of times before the game came out, but that's because I was spending so much time learning the game. But I never got to the point where I had a broken deck, you know? And you had people like Hafu who were just so good that they're like, yeah, you just do this and you're good. And you're just done. It auto-plays itself. I'm like, I don't understand how you do that. How did you figure that? You know, my brain doesn't work that way. I'm not that smart. But Slay the Spire, nonetheless, even with all that being said, still, I think that the balance and the fun factor in that game and the fact that things can go from 0 to 100 so quickly is, it just, I never really got mad at the game. And that's, I think, if you think about all these games, I never really got mad at any of these games, except for maybe Darkest Dungeon like once or twice. But I have so many hours in that once or twice really isn't that much. If you think about it, like, how I got mad at the game was very much how this is ranked, right? and never gotten mad at Enter the Gungeon. I've have like one problem with that game, and that's when if you try to round a corner and there's one pixel of your arm touching the wall, you can't round the corner. It just sticks you there. That's the only problem I have. That's hurt me so many times. It killed my first two attempts, or it killed my first two very close possible attempts to having no-hit runs, but then eventually I got a no-hit run, so I was happy about it. So it's fine. So then nothing really pissed me off too much with that game except for that one thing, and that's what's not even really a big deal. Dead Cells, same thing. There's not a whole lot that pissed me off, but there was a little bit more than Gungeon. Same with Darkest Dungeon. So it kind of ranks down into a tier list of what actually made me mad. Moonlighter, it actually fits because the game made me mad quite a few times. As much as I really had fun with it, I also got really annoyed with it as well. Into the Breach, we've already talked about that with streaming. The Flame of the Flood, not really got mad at it, but just kind of bored, I guess, after a certain amount of times. Like, I can only do one run a day before I was just like, I'm done. Dicey Dungeons, got a little bit annoyed sometimes. Streets of Rogue, a little bit annoyed, but never mad. And then it kind of goes like that. Okay, so now, FTL, Faster Than Light. Watching some of my friends like Simcopter 1, Lethal Frag, just so many lovely people that are so good at this game, and I am so bad at it, but I did get better watching them. Dark Twinge, all these people that were just so good. That was a little discouraging, but the game is so full of personality and so just play at whatever pace you want, play at whatever difficulty you want, play with the unique ships, play with the different characters, but most importantly, listen to the amazing soundtrack the whole entire time. This game is 100% an S-tier game, S-tier roguelike. FTL is... If Gungeon's not my favorite roguelike, it would be FTL. FTL is such a good game. It is so fantastic. It has everything you'd ever want. It doesn't have shooting or like, Twitch reactions or anything, but that doesn't matter all the time. It's not full of Twitch skill, but it is full of strategy skill because you could challenge yourself in many different ways. You can go for a no pause run, which is very hard. You can go for a very difficult run with like a weak ship. You can customize that game however you want as you play, and customize your run, I should say, not the game, but your run. It's not a game that needs a whole lot of mods, if any. If you want to change up your style of gameplay, FTL is it's overall just a perfect game. I love it so gosh darn much. Yeah. Is that everything? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, but I added 2. Slate Spire, Rogue Legacy, Moonlighter, Redneck. Yep, that's all of them. Cool. We've done it. That is our ranking list. I hope that I didn't make anybody upset or mad. Like I said at the beginning, if the game is on this list, it as 100% has my respect. Also doesn't mean that if it's not on the list, it doesn't deserve my respect. But there's a few, maybe either I didn't think about it, or it don't think it fit in the roguelike category, or it's not actually released yet, or I haven't played it enough. That's actually a big one too. I haven't either never played it or haven't played it enough to fit in this. But with that being said, there's a lot of cool things that we talked about today. I think there's a lot of reason for these rankings. I think there's reason that if I sat here for too long, I might make some stuff up. So I'm not going to touch these ever again. This is very much the ranking the ranking of Danotage's roguelikes for the decade between 2010 and 2019. We'll probably play most of these games again. And I can't wait for the next decade of roguelikes because I think they're just going to get better and there's going to be more of them. I can't wait for some of the early access roguelikes to come out to full access. And yeah, if you guys have anything, I will post this same thing in Discord. So if you're part of our Discord, I'll also tweet it out too if you want to make your own rankings and share them with me. So if you have any questions or any concerns, don't give them to me because I don't know what I'm gonna say. This is my ranking, it's my opinion. I guess it's just how it goes. Anyway, if you liked it, come to the stream. We'll talk more. Gemini.